I'm Mrs. Miller, your teacher at ELA Academy. Do you have a summer reading assignment that you're dreading because of the annotation requirement? Are you in college and need some strategies for reading more deeply? Then this series is for you. Today's two-part demonstration will be from the novel To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. If you haven't watched my Annotation 101 video yet, please go do that first. Then come back here. But here's a recap of what we covered. We talked about some of the most common annotation types, which are awesome when done right, but not very helpful when done poorly. The key is to dig deeper and keep asking and answering the question why. In Annotation 101, you'll see the contrast between poor annotations and strong ones. In the remaining annotation videos, you'll just see good annotations modeled. Let's get started. The first annotation type we'll look at is personal connections. This is where you read something that strikes a chord with some of your life experience. But you don't want to simply point out, hey, I had a similar life experience. Go deeper and use something you learned from that life experience to try understanding the characters better. Let's look at our quote. Dill's family was from Macomb County originally. His mother worked for a photographer in Meridian, had entered his picture in a beautiful child contest and won $5. She gave the money to Dill, who went to the picture show 20 times on it. I picked this quote because I noticed that Dill brags a lot. I thought it might reveal an important part of his character. Now for the personal connection. I've known a lot of people like Dill who brag constantly. They've done a million cool things you'd never imagine doing, and maybe they're constantly playing one up. Every time you tell a story about yourself, they have to top it. So, good personal connection, right? Not yet. We need to go deeper. Let's draw an inference from Dill's behavior and try to figure out what makes him tick. Maybe this behavior shows that Dill is arrogant, but I tend to think it comes from low self-esteem. He feels the need to compensate for not being good enough. Maybe he's insecure about not having his biological father around and no father figure to teach him how to be a man. Now we've used the personal connection to understand Dill better. We need to go even further though. As we continue to read the novel, we should keep these thoughts about Dill in mind, and maybe we look for further confirmation of our hypothesis. We might also look for Dill to change, to mature, to learn some lessons and behave differently because of experiences he has in the book. Our next annotation type is historical context. This is where we look for clues about the place and time the story is set in, because that historical context will help us to understand the characters and the plot better. Let's look at the first quote. Bony mules hitched to Hoover carts flicked flies in the sweltering shade of the live oaks on the square. There was no hurry, for there was nowhere to go, nothing to buy, and no money to buy it with. My question while reading was, what are Hoover carts? Well, when I look it up, I'll discover that Hoover carts were a phenomenon of the Great Depression, an entire decade in which the economy was the worst it had been in the history of the U.S. It looks like the book is set in 1932, based on the FDR quote we'll look at next. Some people were so poor that they had to use tiny, cheap carts to get from place to place. They might have been cars that they couldn't afford to repair or put gas into, so they just hitched the car to a horse and called it good. Scan this QR code to see an example. The name is a criticism of President Hoover, whom many people blamed for the Great Depression. We should remember this while reading because we'll see, for example, a farmer that was so poor that he paid his attorney with hickory nuts and turnip greens. Let's look at the next sentence to round this out. But it was a time of vague optimism for some of the people. Macomb County had recently been told that it had nothing to fear but fear itself. So President Hoover wasn't very popular at this time. He ran for re-election but lost to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, often called FDR for short. During the campaign, Roosevelt said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." The sentence from the book says, "It was a time of vague optimism for some of the people, colon." This colon indicates that the rest of the sentence will explain why some people felt optimistic. It's because of FDR's statement about fear. It seems to have inspired them not to be depressed by their poverty, but instead to have hope that things will get better. Everything I've written in these annotations I learned by doing just a little research. Let me caution you against plagiarism though. Most teachers are fine with you summarizing your research like I did here, but please do not just copy word for word from a website. Some teachers may even want you to identify your source. If you're writing an essay with this information, you absolutely must cite your sources to give them credit. But anyways, I didn't have to already know this information. I looked it up to gain a better understanding of the book's setting. As you continue reading, look for opportunities to annotate where the historical context helps you to understand a character or a conflict or a theme. In this case, you might watch for characters who do have that vague optimism and characters who do not. Figure out how that attitude affects their behavior. We might find that desperate people in the book are looking for a scapegoat, an easy target for their anger. Our next annotation type is asking questions. Let's look at a quote relating to Boo Radley, a mysterious character that everyone seems to be scared of. This comes after we learn that Boo was in trouble a lot as a boy, including an incident where he stabbed his father in the leg with a pair of scissors. Finally, it seems, his father had enough. The doors of the Radley house were closed on weekdays as well as Sundays, and Mr. Radley's boy was not seen again for 15 years. That seems rather excessive. He hasn't come out of the house for 15 years. So my question is, why not? Now, students often stop there. It's a good question, but simply asking it doesn't really accomplish anything. We need to attempt to answer it. My speculation is that his father is punishing him by keeping him a prisoner in his own home. I might also wonder if his father is just trying to protect him. But we can go even farther and consider the effect this isolation might be having on Boo. From an earlier story when Boo was hanging out with a group of other boys, it sounds like he wanted to socialize with other people, even if he didn't exactly choose the right crowd. I have to wonder, is it hard on him to be locked up where he can't see other people his own age? Is he lonely? Again, notice that we aren't asking a question merely to check off an annotation type. We're asking a question that helps us to understand Boo Radley. Next is personal reactions. This may sound very similar to personal experience, but really it's much simpler. It starts with an emotional reaction you have to something in the text. Let's look at the quote. Once the town was terrorized by a series of morbid nocturnal events. People's chickens and household pets were found mutilated. Although the culprit was Crazy Addie, who eventually drowned himself in Barker's eddy, people still looked at the Radley place unwilling to discard their initial suspicions. My first reaction was, that is so unfair. Students often stop there and that's all they write for their annotation, but that really isn't enough. Why did you have that reaction? I thought it was totally unfair for people to keep blaming Boo after it was proven somebody else was killing the animals. But even that isn't enough. We need to think about what it tells us about the characters. I infer that those people enjoy making Boo the bad guy. It's a lot of fun to scare each other with stories about him, and they spread a lot of nasty gossip about Boo and his family. Maybe they're afraid to admit they might have been wrong about him for any reason. We might want to keep that in mind, that people in this town have a hard time letting go of their prejudices in general. We'll see that elsewhere in their attitudes towards African Americans, for example. When it does come up, it'll be a good opportunity to make a connection between different parts of the text. I hope that hearing the thought process behind these annotations has helped you to understand how you can annotate more rigorously and deepen your understanding of the text. Watch for part 2 of this video later today. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. And as always, you can find supplementary materials for each and every video on my blog at elaacademy.us. This is ELA Academy.